Before we get into this video, please let me issue a major spoiler warning for Avengers Infinity War and point out that I will be speculating on Avengers 4 and the future of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. So if you don't want to hear any of this, please just turn this video off and come back later. Don't blame me if I spoil the movie for you, because I've warned you. Let's get into it. It's been a number of weeks now since news broke that Walt Disney Pictures had made the decision to fire James Gunn and remove him from the production of Marvel Studios' upcoming Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, after a series of highly offensive and controversial tweets resurfaced. The last few weeks have seen a bit of drama unfold around the entire situation, which has included reported meetings between Gunn and Disney's chairman Alan Horn and CEO Bob Iger, as well as a public address by the entire Guardians cast in support of Gunn, and the continued vocal support of Drax actor Dave Bautista, who has threatened on multiple occasions to leave the project if Gunn isn't brought on board. With Disney's final word coming down not that long ago that Gunn will not in fact be rehired, the internet went into speculative overdrive, trying to guess who Disney might hire to replace Gunn on the project, and whether or not they'll use his screenplay, the first draft of which was said to be completed. My personal views on this whole situation: I certainly don't think Gunn's tweets were funny, and I definitely do not support or condone them, but I don't think that Gunn is a bad person, especially given his cast's public outpouring of support. But then again, these are his friends, and I don't know the man personally. I think that these tweets were probably nothing more than a really pathetic and failed attempt at some kind of darkly twisted humor. I am definitely not going to be sharing the tweets right here or discussing their vile content, as I'm sure that everyone's either seen them by now or at least read about them. Do I think that Disney made the correct move in firing him? Absolutely. While Gunn is a brilliant filmmaker and screenwriter, we do need to remember that Disney's target demographic are children, and it's at the studio's best interest to distance themselves from someone who has publicly made such disturbing comments. According to a Variety article in early August, production on Guardians 3 was set to begin in February 2019, but in a more recent article from The Hollywood Reporter, it's been said that the film's pre-production, which was set to begin soon, has been halted, with staff free to find other work while the studio regroups. Sharing a photo of his completed screenplay draft not that long before his dismissal, Gunn referred to it as every bit of my heart, and judging by the previous installments, Guardians 3 looked to be yet another incredibly personal project. With Disney putting the production into a state of flux, it's become incredibly clear that there's a very good likelihood that, in an attempt to distance the project from Gunn even more, they're most likely going to throw Gunn's personal screenplay away. But would a Guardians movie even work without James Gunn? Would it be possible for Marvel to ever pull this off? Yes, Marvel are a studio who highly dictate their stories and directions of their films to their screenwriters and directors, with some filmmakers even being accused of being a director for hire, fitting into Marvel's cookie-cutter filmmaking. Look, I think this is probably a pretty unfair analogy, because I believe that most Marvel filmmakers get a decent amount of creative freedom. However, I do think that it's fair to say that, along with that creative freedom, there are certain thematic and narrative guidelines that are thrust upon them by the studio. So, that being said, it would be easy to assume that Marvel could simply hire a new filmmaker, tell them the direction of the movie and its narrative, maybe give them some of Gunn's story beats, I mean, how would we ever know, and then tell them to fill in the gaps. All this being said, with the Guardians movies being so disconnected from the rest of the universe, up until Infinity War at least, and Gunn's somewhat unorthodox movements with the films, it's clear to see that Gunn perhaps had more creative freedom than most directors at Marvel. I mean, we just need to look at the fact that Gunn was allowed to set Guardians 2 only a number of months after the first movie, despite the first being released 3 years earlier, with 4 other MCU movies, mostly set in chronological order, being released between them. Add to that Gunn's continued insistence that the studio rarely dictated to him how or what he should write, and that they always let him make the movie that he wanted to make. So again, would Guardians 3 really work with another screenwriter and another director? Sure, Marvel could certainly push a couple of filmmakers to emulate the Gunn style, but with Gunn's style being so radical and so personal, I honestly couldn't see it working. Sure, Taika Waititi was able to pick up the reins on the Thor series with Ragnarok and make it his own incredibly distinct thing, but the Thor franchise was one that needed fixing in the first place. It needed a fresh take and a new, fresh creative filmmaker on board. I personally don't see Guardians as something that needs fixing. Waititi has gone on to become a fan favourite to take on Guardians 3 because of his similarly stylistic realistic and hilarious work on Ragnarok. And there have been rumours of meetings between himself and Disney in recent weeks on an unspecified project. But like Gunn, Taika seems to be a bit of a revolutionary, and though I like his style, I kind of worry about how such a radical shift could impact the final chapter of the planned trilogy. If I were to personally pick anyone to work on the movie, it would be screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, and filmmakers Anthony and Joe Russo, who all proved that they were able to capture the essence and style of not only the Guardians films, but also the Guardians characters in Avengers Infinity War. While these guys certainly do have their own style, first and foremost, they know how to drive a narrative and have been clearly good at following Marvel's orders, having worked on 3 films that have delivered the biggest, what I can only imagine to be studio-driven narrative shifts in the MCU so far. Though the Russos have not confirmed nor denied future involvement with Marvel after Avengers 4, it would make a great deal of sense for Marvel to rehire them as directors for hire and round out the Guardians trilogy in a way that emulates Gunn's style in the way that they did for Infinity War. But again, this being said, with this project in such a state of disrepair, and Dave Bautista referring to the movie as being both on hold indefinitely and on permanent hold, will Disney and Marvel even move forward with this movie at all? Or will Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 become the single largest casualty of this entire situation? If Disney and Marvel are trying to distance themselves and the project from James Gunn as much as possible, it would certainly make sense for them to just can the entire project altogether. I mean, no matter who Disney bring on board this thing, Gunn will always be attached in some way. There will always be a stigma surrounding the movie. Fans and supporters of Gunn will hate the movie because it's not what they should have had in the first place. Those vehemently against Gunn and the production will rage that the movie even exists at all following the controversies. And by dumping the film altogether, Disney can just simply avoid the incoming crap storm that will inevitably break out when the movie is released. At that, we have to ask, do we even need a Guardians 3? What are the possible narrative factors that would make Guardians 3 a movie that even needs to exist? Sure, Gunn and Marvel obviously had a grand plan for a trilogy arc as well as the Infinity War incorporation, but I kind of feel like all of the narrative threads that were left over from Guardians 1 and 2, the relationship between Peter and Gamora, the relationship between Gamora and Nebula, the relationship between Gamora, Nebula and Thanos, Thanos' quest for the stones, these have all been addressed in Infinity War and I imagine could and probably will be wrapped up in Avengers 4. So again, where does that leave Guardians 3 other than just being a movie that deals with the ultimate ramifications of Avengers 4? Of course, without having seen Avengers 4, we can't tell what narrative threads will be opened up next for the team, but right now the 2 big Avengers movies really do feel like they could be the closing act for the Guardians. I honestly can't imagine where the story will go next, or why we'd need to see their adventures continue after the MCU's grand culmination. Even if Marvel had never planned to close out the Guardians major arc in Avengers 4, with skilled editors and a series of reshoots coming up in the near future, what's to say the studio just won't alter the movie in a way that makes Guardians 3 redundant? I mean, the majority of them are either dead or disappeared at the end of Infinity War, and though not all of these are meant to be permanent, what's to say that Marvel just can't change their mind and alter Avengers 4 so that they are? Or maybe, instead of doing another Guardians movie, Marvel will just simply opt to produce solo adventures for the characters going forward. Maybe a Star-Lord film, or a Rocket, Groot and Thor road trip film helmed by Taika Waititi. This way you keep the characters but remove the stigma of a Gunn-inspired film, or a film that Gunn was working on and should have done. The Guardians team-up films don't need to continue, but the characters can still live on in solo adventures or injected into other properties. In fact, this sounds like the most exciting idea to me. Almost like a reverse-engineered Avengers, where instead of the team slowly assembling over time, the team is slowly disbanded over time. If it was up to me, I think that this is personally the way that I would take things. Yeah, I kind of like that idea. No matter what Disney and Marvel decide to do at the end of the day, I think that it's quite clear right now that we won't have our answers for quite a while, and the unfortunate truth probably is that yes, Guardians 3 may likely end up being that major casualty out of this entire situation. So guys, it's your turn now. Fire away in the comments below and please let me know what are your thoughts on this entire situation, and where do you think Disney and Marvel can take the Guardians franchise and characters into the future? If this is your first time viewing one of my videos, you like what you've seen, you'd like to see more like this in the future, then please don't forget to hit that big old subscribe button up on your screen right now, and also hit that like button down below if you're feeling extra generous. Also, don't forget to check out my many social media accounts, and please consider supporting me over on Patreon. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day.